Imagine you're caught in the waters of a fast-flowing river. Its surface is churning, filled with leaves, branches, and debris being swept along with the current. As the river twists and turns, you're forced to react and fight against the current, trying to protect yourself and get to safety. This exhausting struggle can feel a lot like our daily lives. We're constantly tossed about by a relentless stream of thoughts, emotions, and external demands. We get caught in frustration, worry, or resentment, carried away by the current without realizing there's another way. What if, amidst the chaos, you could discover a way to step out of the turbulent waters? Imagine sitting peacefully on the bank as you watch those turbulent waters pass you by. The churning surface and the current of the river are still the same, but you're no longer being dragged along with it. You're free from its pull. You're able to observe all the comings and goings that the river brings with it on its way to the sea. Mindfulness offers us this lifeline. It's the practice of learning to step out of the turbulent waters and on to the steady riverbank. From this place of pure awareness, we can witness the flow of our inner and outer experiences without getting swept away by them. This is the starting point of a journey toward greater balance, self-control, and freedom. Without the anchor of mindfulness, we remain swept along with the current of thoughts and experiences. We become deeply entangled with our thoughts and stories. Every fleeting thought, like "I'm not good enough" or "they don't respect me," feels like the absolute truth in that moment. We react to external stimuli without pausing, caught in the current, reacting rather than responding. We lose touch with our deeper selves. We function on autopilot, making choices based on old patterns and external pressures rather than our authentic values and aims. When we learn to sit on the riverbank of awareness, several shifts begin to happen. We're able to see our thoughts for what they are and don't become entangled with them. We gain space to consciously decide how we would like to respond to external stimuli. Through mindfulness, even when the river of our experience is turbulent, we experience a deep stillness within us. We gain insight into our triggers, urges, and patterns. This self-knowledge enables us to make choices that are more in line with our self-worth, leading to a life of greater meaning and one lived closer to our most important values. In his book, Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion, when speaking on mindfulness, Sam Harris wrote, "Being mindful is not a matter of thinking more clearly about experience. It is the act of experiencing more clearly, including the arising of thoughts themselves. Mindfulness is a vivid awareness of whatever is appearing in one's mind or body, thoughts, sensations, moods, without grasping at the pleasant and recoiling from the unpleasant. At its core, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment with an attitude of openness and non-judgment. It's about experiencing our internal world and the external world in its clearest form, without the filters of judgments or likes and dislikes. The normal level of being for most people is to be continually identified with their thoughts. The 17th century philosopher René Descartes' famous adage, "I think, therefore I am," has become the baseline for most people's concept of self. Through practicing mindfulness, we come to realize that we are not our thoughts. We come to understand that our thoughts are just another thing that we can notice and perceive objectively without identifying with them. The same is true for emotions. Most people, when they feel angry, anxious, scared, or whatever it may be, automatically identify their sense of self to that feeling. They say, "I'm angry," or "I'm anxious," rather than realizing that the emotion is not something they are, but simply something they are experiencing. Some Buddhist traditions believe that the mind is like a sensing organ. In its purest state, the mind doesn't create thoughts or feelings. It senses them as they come and go, arise and fall. Through practicing mindfulness, you'll come to realize that your own thoughts and feelings are not much different from the sensory input that we receive from the outside world. Just like the weather, or the passing of traffic, or the waters of a river flowing past, we can perceive our thoughts and emotions as they come and go without becoming identified with them. Mindfulness is not just about our internal noise though. It includes a clear perception of our external experiences. Most of us see the world around us only through unconscious labels and concepts. We see a tree and automatically conceptualize that thing as tree without really noticing its intricacies and its beauty. This, of course, is helpful to do when we're going through our developmental years because it helps us to simplify, understand, and conceptualize the world. But as adults, we fall into the same patterns of seeing and perceiving that deduct from us experiencing the full spectrum of the reality around us. This can be particularly true for how we perceive others. We perceive the attitudes and actions of others through our previously applied labels and concepts, without really being able to see the reality of the situation. Another way we do this is by automatically comparing things. We can fall into the pattern of perceiving things only through the lens of it being better or worse compared to our past experience. Mindfulness enables us to become conscious of our internal world without identifying with it, and to recognize and drop the filters through which we see the world around us. In the next lesson, we're going to get into mindfulness meditation, which is the best way to practice being in the state of mindfulness and to strengthen what we could call your mindfulness muscle. But don't get confused about what mindfulness is though. It's not something that you do just while you are meditating. Meditation is a tool that allows us to practice being mindful so we can remain in that state throughout the rest of our days. Outside of meditation, I see there as being two important ways for us to practice mindfulness. The first is recognizing our internal chatter and identification with our thoughts and feelings. We touched on this a little bit in stage 3 of the Phoenix 90. But when you notice yourself lost in thought, whether positive or negative, just bring your attention to the thought itself and observe it without judgment and see where it goes. The same goes for emotions. Bring your attention to the emotion itself rather than the event or situation that you might perceive to have caused the emotion. When observing your internal world in this way, it's actually incredibly helpful to name the experience. When you think a doubtful thought, for example, just acknowledge it and say something like, "There's a doubtful thought, interesting," and let it go. Again, and perhaps more importantly, it's the same for emotions. When you recognize yourself being swept away in the flow of an emotion, just bring your awareness to the feeling and acknowledge it without judgment, saying something like, "Here's frustration, interesting." The second practice that I believe is one of the most helpful and applicable ways to practice mindfulness is by recognizing and dropping the unconscious labels and concepts that we apply to the things around us. Whether you are experiencing something new and novel to you or something that you've done 1,000 times, try to notice the automatic labels or conceptions that you have of that thing. Allow your residual perceptions of that thing to fall away and just experience it in its purest form. Mindfulness reveals what we truly are underneath the identification and labels. A part of us that can observe all without getting swept away. Through practice, we discover a pure awareness that simply observes experience. It's like stepping back from our thoughts and feelings to see them with clarity. We realize, I am the one who is aware of this anger. I am not the anger itself. This awareness, though, is not something that we create, but rather what we already are. It's a deep stillness, a sense of spaciousness that remains untouched by the changing contents of our lives.